So this is the paddling and sort of cutting demo for the candle holder. Basically, what you need to do is you need to let this dry out a little bit. So I did that. I'll take it off my piece here just to show you. And it looks pretty good. It's still somewhat on the lumpy bumpy side. If you find that you don't like the lumpy bumpy look, and kind of get rid of that for a minute, then what you can do is you can come back and you can paddle it. So paddling is just this very light kind of paddling in the direction of your project. So I did stiffen this up a little bit so that I can start to do that. And when I do paddle, I'm not gonna like hit it with all my might either. So mine's pretty stiff at this point. It's actually in a great spot to cut into it. So what could you use for a paddle? Well, this is what, kind of the paddles that look like, this is what they look like at Blaine. You could use like a paint stick. You could use a piece of cardboard. You could use, let's see, you can't really use a rib, but paddling and ribs are going to be the best way to get this kind of smoothed out the way that you want it. Now, you don't want it super dried out and you don't want it super wet. So you may have to come back and do a little bit of refining after that's done. So we did talk a little bit about sponging. I think we did, but if we didn't, you can smooth some of your project as well by using a sponge. And you would just kind of get some water in a cup. There's that good old yogurt container that I've been using this whole time. And then you would come back and you would just smooth this out, okay? That's probably one of the last things that I would do to get it just nice and smooth with the form. Now, don't neglect the top of your project either. Make sure that you've both paddled it, okay? And this one has a little bit of paint on it, but I can still use it as a paddle. And then come back and smooth it. And you can smooth it with your fingers or you can smooth it with a sponge. All right, next part. So the next thing you need to decide is what your design was. I just have to grab my design. So my design was kind of this very geometric looking project. It had some things that were bumped out. It had some things that were cut in. So in order to make the things that are bumped out, and you're kind of required to do that for your candle holder, is that you are probably going to want to roll out sections of clay, cut them out, and then add them on. So for this step, you're going to need your design. You're going to need your slip, and this is my slip from the first video. It's inside of a little spice container. If you don't have slip, take a little bit of your clay, put it inside of a container, and put a bunch of water in there, okay? You just need something that's watery so that you can use it as slip. If you don't have slip, that gets really difficult if things are pretty dried out. Now, if you'll notice, the size of my project got a little bit bigger than what it was supposed to be, but that's okay, okay? So the first thing that I would do is I would start to plan out my project. So I'm just gonna move this off to the side for a minute. So on my design, I have some bumped out pieces that are basically very square. So for that, you're probably gonna need to throw a little bit of clay down, flatten it out, kind of how we made the slab before. It's kind of a smaller slab. And then take your rolling pin, or remember your can. You can use your can to roll this out. So what you want to do is, if you're rolling this out, and I have you know, quite a few of these kind of rectangular pieces. They're kind of long and skinny, but I can cut several out of this. That's fine. Remember that your pop can is closed with stuff still in it. All right, so this is pretty thin. You'll notice it's about a 1/4 inch thick. And if you need kind of a gauge, if you do have a stir stick, this is a great thing to use as a gauge. So what I would do now is I would probably, if it were mine, I would come through here and I would just give it a nice sponge. If you have a sponge. If you don't, that's okay too. Mine seems to have a little bit of the canvas texture, so I'm just trying to get that off. Okay, so once I have my slab made, then I'm gonna cut this out. So again, we're gonna go back to your needle tool, or you can use a paper clip, that's fine. I find that needle tools sometimes cut out things better than X-Acto knives when they're flat. So what I want to do now is I'm going to look at my drawing. So I've got some things that are sort of square. Okay, so I could do some square cuts. Now, one of the things that you could do is if you had a stir stick or if you have a ruler, you can really get a nice square cut with this. So this, I'm thinking that maybe I'm just going to do a large rectangle. On this with maybe a smaller rectangle inside of it. So I'm going to move this off to the side so I can get a nice square cut. Okay, so I've got my piece and I'm only going to show you adding one piece. But this is, I'm going to do this kind of tall. Oh, that doesn't really look square, but that's okay. So I'm going to take my project and I'm going to look at the side of it and I'm going to say, okay, well, where do I want to put this? Do I want to put it up a little bit from the bottom, but I want to make sure that it's pretty square. So maybe like that. Whoops. Back on again. Maybe that's my placement. Not sure, but we'll put it on the side. So in order to attach two pieces of clay together, we've talked about this in the past, you need to do what we call scoring and slipping, okay? So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take my needle tool or a fork. I have this little baby fork that I got, which was super cute, and a salad last week from Target. And I'm just going to score lightly over the top of the area that I'm going to be attaching, okay? So I'm gonna score the back of this, and then I probably should have figured out where this went before I did any scoring. So we'll have to put this back on top of my project and just make a couple of guidelines so I know where to attach this. So I made a couple of guidelines here, and I'm actually gonna come back and score this, and I can use my little fork again. Such a cute little fork. Really tiny. So I'm gonna score up the side of my pot. And then what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna open up my slip container. So I kind of shook mine up, and mine's glass, so just try not to drop it on the floor. You can either use your hands or a brush, and you're just gonna brush it on to your clay. Now, it's okay if it's watery, it's not a huge deal. You just need something to sort of stick to the side, okay? Now I'm gonna do the same thing to the side of my pot where I scored. And, you know, too much slip is really not that much of a problem unless you put it on your entire project. Okay, so then I'm going to take and I'm going to place my piece of clay right onto my project. Now, one of the things that you might want to do is you might want to look at it from kind of the side. I have a little piece of something on there. Try to keep foreign things out of your clay. It's much easier to work with that. Okay, and then I'm gonna kind of smush it on so that some of that clay comes kind of oozing out on your project, okay? And then I'm gonna take and I'm gonna use either the back side of this, I can use the back side of this brush, I can use an actual smoothing tool, which you are not gonna have. It looks kind of like this. And I'm going to smooth this section to the base. So what happens when I do this is I'm basically just sort of smoothing this clay kind of down to the base, all right? And you can do this, I would do it on all sides of this piece. Just so that you have a nice tight seal to your project. Now, if you don't score and slip, your pieces are gonna fall off. So you don't want that to happen on a nice candle holder that you give, you know, maybe someone for a holiday or something, for that to fall off. Okay, so there's my piece that I've just added. So now I would go ahead and I would add all the pieces that I need. And in the next little snippet of video, I'll show you how to cut into your project and put some holes in it. All right.